of sharing. Durian ASEAN.
Right, so we have some interesting happenings in our studio this morning. We're gonna have even a call from Mauritius to pick up later at 9 a.m. today. So do stay tuned because we have very prolific business guys with us today. The guest that we have today, Wai Hong, has won top Young Entrepreneur Awards from Startup Smart in Australia at a Hot 30 Under 30 as well, and also a top 100 most influential people in Melbourne.
I'm getting a bit red here.
He's practicing his ASEAN value of humility.
Right.
But in any case, I'll just want to share on something that I read about last night, which is about the ASEAN Youth Forum that's held in Myanmar currently, concurrently with the ASEAN People's Forum that is held in Myanmar because they are the chair this year, right? And I find it very inspiring, to see university students, especially from the Yangon University, to be organizing, such an event by themselves and pull it all together. And I just think that the efforts that they put in, it's very inspiring. So just a special shout out to listeners in Myanmar and to everyone that, good job, Myanmar. So, and also to next year is going to be chair. Malaysia is going to be the chair, and I'm feeling very excited. Okay, so let's see what we can do as a chair next year for ASEAN, and what could ASEAN bring to inspire the youths in Malaysia as well. So definitely waiting for that. All right. So let's start up today's Newsmaker session by a little news report from MH370. Before that, I should also add that MCMC, which is the Malaysian Communications and Multimedia Agencies, right? A government agency has warned that any false reporting or much speculation without facts might be taken action. You could be charged under Section 211 on the Communications Act 1999. So make sure that try not to spread any speculations without facts, right? So that MCMC doesn't go after you, especially if you're Malaysian. So, yeah, with that in mind, we're gonna be more careful about reporting what MH370 is, the current updates. Just a brief update of what has happened, within the last few days. So there's a lot of critics of Malaysia's handling of the case, and we'll probably be covering more on this on the Monday elaborate session. But for now, though, Malaysian government is thanking all the parties who are involved, which is 26 countries. That hey, thank you very much, and and they say that military information should be shared in times of crisis. And so a lot of the countries has been very supportive and has been sharing their military information. This is coming from a report from Astro Awani. And yeah, what do you guys think about sharing military information?
Ladies first, right?
Okay, so in our previous discussion, we talked about how there was concern about sharing military information because it allows, it makes your country vulnerable. Especially if, the US is coming in, and then, it reveals to people, how, what kind of, military radar and data that you have, especially, with the South China Seas, having that kind of, tensions. And, you don't really want to know, where, and until what extent does, the military, radar covers. But, in this kind of cases, do you reveal them? And it seems like for Malaysia, they say that, in this exceptional time, we will, we'll work together as much as we can.
Yeah, I mean, especially for Malaysia, I think there is an even greater need for them to be, I guess, more open about sharing this kind of information when they are the ones responsible to a certain degree. For, I mean, the onus is on them because they have the most to lose by not actually doing and actually leading this investigation well. So I think it's really important for the sharing of this sort of information at this stage. Of course, it does review a few things like, why wasn't the plane intercepted and and a few things like that. So it's just kind of
like, do we even really have much military security practice in place?
It is a bit of a dilemma especially when it kind of reviews not so much the extent of your military might, but the vulnerabilities of your what you're actually doing there. So but I think it's vital. It's just getting over that potential, or maybe we're actually revealing too much of what we're not able to do, as opposed to what we are able to do. I think that's why Malaysia is a bit of a fix. And
as locals, maybe we're often very skeptical of the government ability to do top-notch national security practices and whatnot. I don't know. That's just a general skepticism. So we don't know if the reason why they have not been revealing a lot of information is because they don't have, or because they don't want to. So, but that aside, now we have Cambodia who is joining the search party. So this is actually a turn back from what they issued earlier, which is, saying that they do not have the capability to join in searching for MH370. But now they are saying that, okay, we are going to send navies and also helicopters. So, I think a lot of people is wondering why such turn back on what they have said previously. So yeah. And I guess we can't speculate.
Well, I guess you could say that before, Cambodia could be watching and saying, there's so many people already searching the South China Sea, and they could assume that perhaps, hey, I think it's not necessary for us to get too involved. But now that the search perimeter is broadened to such a wide area, I think it's only fair that they might say, look, maybe it's worthwhile for us to come into this search, because right now it's like searching for a needle in a meadow, not even a haystack. So I think that's perhaps one of the reasons giving Cambodia a bit more credit on that front.
Right. And I think that in international relations, well, of course, first of all, joining the search would make you, it concerns your international image. Yeah. Of course, you want to be viewed as a good country who assists in all this. Yeah. But on the other hand, I think there's also some reward in being the country that found MH370. Because, there is. So I guess that's also why, they are in it. But, still kudos for all the efforts, from the 26 countries.
Yeah.
Right. Now, next, moving on to a report from Maritime Activity Reports. So talking about how the fast-growing Asia needs a strong, unified voice. So they're talking about how ASEAN economy, which is growing at 5.2% this year, is projected to be growing at 5.6% in 2015. And an essential element is because of ASEAN's economic integration. So, talking about how the dragon head Shanghai will become more important over time, and Hong Kong will remain important for North Asia, and Singapore's influence will further strengthen in Southeast Asia and beyond that. So, any insights on how Southeast Asia could further grow, and how we currently see that they are talking about how Asia is changing the face of global shipping. Perhaps this is the next big market instead of just Europe or America. And do you think that the next big market is going to be Asia?
Well, I don't know why I'm always talking, but I guess there seems to be a very clear understanding globally that especially since the global financial crisis, that the economic powers within this, have shifted from Europe to the east. And while America still remains a strong powerhouse, I mean, China is predicted to overtake the US in GDP by 2038. I think India shortly after. And so what we're seeing is a shift on that front, on the Asian front, as far as, where the money is. But I think what's really interesting for me is be able to see, you talk about ASEAN integration. And I think what's interesting for me to see is China able to, I guess, lead not ASEAN, but Asia, into this so-called shift of power and shift of economic wealth and everything like that. And I think even within ASEAN itself, while Singapore will remain important, is Singapore able to lead ASEAN? And I think that's a question. I think that it's very unclear right now who is able to lead ASEAN moving forward, integrating through all these different things. I think some of my experience with Bruneians, for example, has been really interesting because Brunei sees themselves as a very small country without any need to rely on other countries for all, I mean, if you think about the way the ASEAN works, sometimes there's a little bit of a conflict of interest. And so, I mean, perhaps Brunei could be a moderator, if not a leader within the region. But I think it is important for us to start to see where is leadership going to come from if ASEAN is going to move forward. And it is moving forward from a growth perspective, 5.2, 5.6% as you mentioned before. But I think it's important. It's interesting to see who will emerge as a leader or even a moderator within the region, especially considering that Asians being Asians are not very keen to take on the leadership mantle because it does bring more problems sometimes. Yeah, stress is the right thing. Yeah, responsibilities. But it's actually Asian attitudes. I think we're not so keen to just take on the leadership mantle. It's something that we have to. Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see.
But what I believe is a few contending countries who's trying to play big brother in ASEAN, as far as I've heard so far, would be Indonesia, Singapore, Thailand maybe, and so we'll have to watch on to see what transpires in the next few months or years. So, but the trend is supporting ASEAN region right now, especially in light of one of the news article that we covered before this, talking about how ASEAN FDI has already surpassed China. In fact, it's just the top 5 ASEAN countries, ASEAN 5. We're not even talking about all ASEAN combined.
Yeah.
So, and this is mainly fueled by China's aging population, and an increasingly expensive workforce, and a rising middle consumer class. So, the trend seems to be good going for ASEAN countries.
I mean, just to add on to that, I mean, China, only last year was the first time, I mean, if you look at the FDI for China, it was the first time that money going out of China was exceeded the money that was going into China. So FDI into China was actually less than the money that was going out of China. So I guess as opposed to seeing as more, a problem, is more of an indication of the maturity of the Chinese market and China being able to, I guess, start to invest back into the rest of the world. And obviously ASEAN is a very hot region for that regard. You mentioned things like the cost of employing. I mean, it's actually cheaper for me to live in Malaysia than it is to live in Shanghai. And 10 years ago, that wouldn't be the case. And so I think there is an interesting focus on ASEAN right now. And the next 5 to 10 years will be interesting. I think, like you said, it's to see how the region develops.
Yeah. Maybe Wai Hong could share a little insight on China, since you spent quite some time in China back then, which is related to our next report, talking about Crony Capitalism.
Okay.
Yeah. So, the Crony Capitalism Index actually calculates, who benefits in an economy where big businesses or people with political links benefit. That's what cronyism is about. Yeah. So the economists came out with a whole list of which countries is highest on the Crony Capitalism Index. And guess what? Let's read up the top 10 in the world. So number 1 is Hong Kong. Number 2 is Russia. Number 3 is Malaysia. Number 4 is Ukraine. Number 5 is Singapore. Number 6 is Philippines. Number 7 is Mexico. Number 8 is Taiwan. Number 9 is India. And number 10 is Indonesia. For US and China, they actually stands at number 17 and number 19. So I think that this is quite interesting because I've always had this perception that China has not equitable like wealth distribution. But it seems like at home we are actually number 3 in the world. So, but what is actually happening in China that you could observe at home?
It's probably more because I think the article also mentioned that China, the Chinese guys who have profited from this are better at hiding their wealth than perhaps the rest of the countries. So it is perhaps partly that. I think. But nonetheless, I mean, it's very well known and very well understood within China itself, and even outside of China to a certain degree, that in order to get anything significant done within China, you need to have political links. And whether or not that's to junior government officials or to senior government officials, the bigger the project, the stronger your connections must be. So that, I mean, especially in the key area, especially in areas where it involves things like payments, finance, banking, even technology today, there's, big, good connections is really a huge thing in China. But I think one thing I will comment about the state of cronyism in China is that while that is very true, the whole idea of guanxi, the whole idea of relationship being very important in China, I think one thing that does guard and one thing that has helped China still continue to progress despite all this happening is that the Chinese have a very strong honor system that guards what they do. So even if, for example, I have good connections with, a government official, I'm a businessman, my father's grandfather's mother's son, whatever, is a government official, that just because I've been given that project doesn't mean I can simply do that, not complete that project without actually a certain level of excellence. So if I flop and if I don't do something that's good, or if the bridge collapses, or if the train crashes, my head is on the line. My head is on a chopping block. There is this honor system that says, look, if I give you this project, great, you can make some money, but make sure you do a good job at it. And if I don't, then there are very serious consequences. I think that's one thing that actually is within the fabric of the Chinese honor system, and I think it's something that's different in this regard, lah.
Yeah. Contrasting with Malaysia.
I mean, look, it's unfair to say contrasting to Malaysia. I think there's plenty of countries within Southeast Asia who are on this cronyism index, and I think they may or may not have such a strong honor system guarding their within their culture. So I think Malaysia. I don't know. Do you seem to have more thoughts about Malaysia than I do.
I have some friends who's doing this kind of things too. Like, they have this way of doing. They tell me if you get the project. I mean, this is just some personal inserts. Like, they got the project, and then if, for example, they want umbrella, and then you get the project, because you have connections, and then the umbrella is actually just the umbrella you bought is maybe 2 ringgit 50 cents, and then the tender that you got is you put the price as 20 ringgit. So that's how you make money. But actually, the quality of that umbrella is only 2 ringgit 50 cents, but you're selling it at 20 ringgit.
Sure.
So it's just umbrella, Imagine if it's bridge, or it's maybe a building, or road, or something. So,
and I'll have to add that currently we have an ongoing commission of inquiry into buildings that collapse. No, I'm talking about buildings or stadiums that collapse.
Yes.
This might be linked to that.
Yeah.
Yes. And I should add that, the index calculates how, different sectors, where rent seeking, and the living is easy, and and also how politically connected businesses are most likely to prosper. For example, you're talking about the oil and gas industry, you're talking about the ports, you're talking about utilities and telecom services, steel, mining, defense, casinos, ports, airports. Yeah, so...
And it's kind of scary. I mean, just from you just listing out all the above mentioned businesses, it's all infrastructure.
Yes.
And it's all related to basically the foundations by which we not necessarily build the country, but I mean, when infrastructure is not laid out properly, then there's not much of a platform for the rest of the country to rely on or to lean on to grow. So it can be quite scary to think that, that we're not doing a good job in managing the quality of the construction of such critical infrastructure. So it is a bit scary, isn't it?
And also how all these industries are, like you mentioned, fundamental, but it requires licenses.
Right.
And you can't really get into it and do it properly without licenses. And if licenses are mandatory, and it means that all these important things that controls the country's future, if it's only to the certain few, it might not be of their interest to be continuously improving it, right?
Because they have monopolized the whole industry. It's like,
Yeah.
there's nothing the SMEs can do.
And it's interesting because in Philippines, they seem to be quite concerned about this index, coming from Philstar, a report talking about how they are ranked number 6 in Marcos' era, like Crony Capitalism. And they're talking about how, despite the people power overthrowing Marcos' regime in 1986, but it seems like they have just switched hands and the rich are getting richer. So, and they're talking about how the rich are grabbing a bigger slice of the pie rather than making the pie bigger.
And this seems to be a concern in Malaysia, isn't it? I mean, I guess for many of us, we talk about political change and we talk about all that stuff. But in the Philippines, is that something that is a picture of what we could end up becoming, even if we see political change in Malaysia? So I think that's something that's worthwhile to. I mean, I don't know. It's a bit of a I guess something a pro-government kind of a statement. But I think it's a worthwhile topic to engage with if just in our kopitiam session.
Personally, I think that no matter what, there must be a strong civil society and a strong watchdog movement, because what does it mean, engaging, sacrificing our life for, let's say, a regime change, but yet it has just switched hands from maybe a despotic ruler to another. So, coming on to also a pretty sad news from Phnom Penh, the Post in Cambodia, talking about the silent killer that is taking toll in Cambodia. We're talking about arsenic poisoning here. Arsenic is actually a naturally occurring toxin which comes from polluted groundwater that is dredged up by hand-operated pumps that they call tube wells in Cambodia. Yeah. So in Cambodia's arsenic problem, it seems like one of the reason that has been cited to be why the problem is falling between the cracks is because it lacks funding. And just a little context on what arsenic poisoning is. So basically this arsenic, a naturally occurring toxin, will it actually cause cancers in your body and takes years to do its lethal work. And how if you do get infected with it, especially in a lot of villages across Cambodia, you would get skin braided with dark holes, my colleagues would call it. Just to give you some picture, ulcers and decaying tissue, and it kills you. So, but it's an odorless poison, so you wouldn't even know it until when it's too late. And so mass poisoning has been happening, that's affecting hundreds of thousands of Cambodians. That's at risk right now. And yet the government is now saying that we don't have any budget allocated to solve this arsenic poisoning problem.
I think the saddest thing is that they know that the well is full with the water that's contain arsenic, but there's nothing they can do. They need water, they need to drink water, but there's no other sources where they can get the water supply. So even though they know that it's a poison water, but still they need to consume it every day.
Oh dear. Wow.
So it's a pretty sad situation.
Yes, even the crops that they need to use the water to water, like the crops needs watering, and then they use this arsenic water to water those crops. Like there's one villager who says that at least you have crops, you have something to eat. Better than that you have nothing to eat at all. Like you have something that is poisonous to eat, but then it's better than you have nothing to eat at all. So it's a very sad thing that they said that they doesn't have funding to solve this thing because many people is dying. There's a lot of villages which is influenced by this. Around 10 provinces. The high levels of arsenic have been detected in food and also well water in 10 provinces in Cambodia.
Wow.
So I believe we really hope that the ASEAN community could do something about this together.
Yes.
And of course we have a practice of non-interference, but I think in this kind of case there should be a humanitarian aid in helping Cambodia to solve its crisis, right? And of course Cambodia government needs to take the lead as well.
Yeah. At least if they said it doesn't have the funding, they should search for funding outside. Not just saying that.
But I think it's a terrible excuse. Not at all. How can you say that you don't have budget for arsenic poisoning treatment? And there are some methods of treatments that's available. Yeah.
It's just a really sad scenario. I don't have very many comments, but it's quite heartbreaking.
Like seeing the photos, even it makes even the like there's a villager who said that even his own children is afraid of him.
Yeah.
Because of all the bruises, all the dark hole, I would call it hole because it looks like a hole, and then the ulcers and decaying issues, the tissues.
Wow.
Like it's very sad to hear this kind of news.
It reminds us to count our blessings as well.
Yes, yes. We are actually very blessed in Malaysia, I would say.
Okay. Despite us liking to complain a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because we have no other more serious issue to complain about, huh? It's like we should feel blessed.
We should be thankful. Yeah.
Right. So we'll end today with a news piece from Malaysia talking about how Bank Negara, which is a central bank, looking at how there's a robust growth in 2014, but they're on guard for inflation. And they're also warning investors this is a different news piece from Malaysian Chronicle talking about how real estate investing in Malaysia, you should definitely be looking at the new regulations that is set out, which is set in place in order to lower down property speculation that has been happening in Malaysia. All right, and good news from the Vietnam property market, of course, talking about how the lower prices and easy payments terms are looking to boost Vietnam's property market. All right, so we'll see you in our next Newsmaker session tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye-bye.